you. I asked that our panelists, our presenters, to come up, and this would be your time for questions. So we'll pause here for a brief moment. So we got three wide variations in topics. So at this time, would anyone like to start with a question?
I actually got questions for all three. I'm going to go in reversal of Chuck first. With respect to the patent holder, is that a royalty-free share for standardization?
We are trying to sort that out right now. Conceptually, he's on board that it's in the public interest. Of course, he wants to monetize it in a manner that's fair to all.
Royalty-free is easy to standardize in comparison to monetized patents.
Yeah.
There are actually some prohibitions at the ISO IEC level. You have more acceptance of royalties at the ANDA level. The middle ground of the RP sample basically follows ISO IEC.
Yeah.
But royalty attachments can be a stumbling block.
The intent is to square things away into a royalty-free and sort of carrot and stick. The stick end of it is that theoretically the government can block in and take it by eminent domain. They'd have to pay what the judge said it's worth. But the intent is that nothing's going to
that kind of solution would end up royalty-free on the standard side.
Yeah.
So that's certainly from a standard perspective. Fine.
And I don't own patents.
For Ralph, I'd like to throw a comment on the roadmap majesty. You pointed out we call it appropriate radar map, but you refer to it also as charted data. That map is what's called the radar system map graphic, which is why it was linked to the assumed position of the radar, and meaning that the VR position of the GPS, and separate. Map graphics are still part of SOLAS radars. It is my personal view as a mayor that with the advent of charted data, that the radar should be used in sync as the charted data from the ECDIS and not have its own map graphics unless that is representing operational information. For example, a restricted area, a notice area, or something like that, deliberately entered by the mayor. I don't know how many that's if any, but that's
I must assume that this was at a time when ECDIS was not as developed.
correct, but in taking old accident and new, there is a technology difference that I think is important. I'm sorry, I didn't but in looking at have you, I understand you're still looking for DOD and Navy primary, but have you looked at particularly the evaluation of a bridge resource management team, for example, and is the cognitive measurement applicable to a team, even perhaps as individuals within the team in the same scenario?
The original research was actually specifically for a team, for a team of 4 operators doing if you think about controlling multiple UUVs and UAVs, and then the idea was that right now you have essentially 1 operator per device, and the Navy wants to get 1 operator per 16 devices. And then how would you be able to begin to realize someone is about to fail open, and you can bring another operator online. So it's absolutely its original goal was to do as a team. So the research we have now is looking at 10 people at a time going through a simulation.
I would encourage your company to sit down and at least socialize with courses could be a very, very influential in a positive manner on the model courses even themselves. Lee Alexander, Lee is one of the original authors in the Island Model Course for ECDIS. Lee, is that an accurate perception on my part, do you think? So really encouraging it. And if you need help in that area, just I'll steer you some.
Our next question is in the front, and I have 7 points.
First of all, you have congratulations to a very lovely product, and we've heard people talking about it, but to my knowledge, we haven't seen this developed so far by anyone else. So I have a question from a European perspective. Obviously, now also very happy to hear that we're going in the open source direction, and the funding from Homeland Security is that having any limitations on you in the future when we go abroad with this and we look in Europe? How does that look?
Indeed, there's no restrictions, and in fact, Homeland Security has, they're sensitive to the fact that they are Homeland Security, and that if a system is a Homeland Security system, there's a certain part of the population that will have nothing to do with it. So they have essentially said, no, we want this to be a commercial capability, and to the extent that we can support it and then kick it out of the nest and have it live on its own 2 feet, that would be a good thing. So they're 100% supportive of this going into the public domain and being an open system.
But since you are as far as you are, is this thing that we need this for somebody else to read that we is all about the word, it should be used?
Yeah, and part of what we're looking for is peer review. There's a point where it makes sense to have everybody, we just do it the way we feel like it should, but now we really need to have them pick it apart and say, yeah, this is good and that's bad, and let's do it this way.
Michael, my question was for you. You mentioned in your talk about that there's an 80% loss of information between when you receive the training and when it actually goes into use. Does that number change at all when the training is integrated with the hands-on or OJT component to training? Because a lot of what I think we're talking about in terms of using new electronic navigation systems would have that sort of component where it's not classroom delivery but actually put into practice during that time frame also.
Yeah, it's not, that data did not come from an OJT perspective, it did come from the Navy Schoolhouse. So it would be like, it looks like the simulator. I mean, because if you think the submarine, right, there's no visual cues, so when you're sitting inside a room with all the server racks, it's the same thing as if you're on the submarine. So it's very similar environment, but it's not.
But it's not straight classroom instruction, it was actually integrated sort of simulator and classroom. And even with that, you still lose.
So in 30 or 20, 30 days, it's down to 79% or 21%.
Yeah, another one from Michael. Have you done any studies to see subjectively as an individual's assessment of where they are with their cognitive capacity? They're about the red line. Does that match up with what you measured? You know what I'm saying?
Well, the original research behind using EEGs was actually to help children, ADHD, attention hyperactive disorder children, be able to understand when they were losing focus, when they were no longer on task. And so it basically maps the research shows that it aligns very well that where you think you begin to lose focus, you begin to become cognitively overloaded, and that is a knowable state. You can be taught that this is what it feels like to become overloaded. So I don't know that it's necessarily de facto you feel like I'm about to be overloaded and then I'm going to fall off the cliff, but you can absolutely understand what it is to you as an individual, what it feels like. The way it feels for you is different than the way it feels for me, and you can be taught to understand what it feels like for you. That's actually one of the really neat things about the research is showing that almost the most valuable thing is that once they teach you what it feels like when you get cognitively overloaded, then you can ask for help, or you can start shutting things down that you're not wanting to pay attention to, and then that reduces your cognitive load, so you don't need any new systems.
I'd like to wear a halo that has like a red light that sort of
John, I also want to congratulate you on some very fine work there. And my two questions are, chart refresh, you usually know what ENCs, but do you reach back out on a monthly, or weekly, or per use basis to find out if there's is there one extension for the new chart?
The direct ENC, actually, NOAA is, they update that live themselves. So,
Right, because your application go back and get a new chart every time.
we get a new chart every time.
New chart.
It's an online service that we're using, and actually part of our how we'll still make a living when we grow up plan is that we'll provide offline chart capability. So for an additional $10, then it'll suck all of it in and keep it for offline use.
The following that you also look at the Army Corps, the inland ENC.
We're in the middle of implementing that, and right now we don't support the inland, basically because they don't have a ArcGIS-based server to get that.
I think they are building ours this week soon.
Yeah.
And then finally, this last one is, how about any of the other messages, like message 21, which is know that we be displaying those 8 times.
Nothing planned yet, but we can pretty much do it.
We'd love to talk about that some more.
Okay, yeah.
Second to do it, obviously, is trying to keep up with what's available, what's the best. But there is a misperception, and that is the updates to the NOAA ENC are not the best available or most recent information. Do we have any pilots here? Most pilots now are using other types of supplemental information that's displayed on top of the ENC, particularly cross-channel surveys, multi-beam surveys, report authorities, whatever. So the ENC now is becoming the backdrop. It's the wallpaper which you put up the best available information, usually within 24 to 48 hours. Mr. Robinson was explaining briefly about Southwest Pass, which they dredge this on a continuous basis. Paul Langus on the Columbia River uses it to figure out where the latest shoaling is. Guys in the Fraser River, they have more problems with high water, with heavy sediments buried in the low water, and on. This, again, is the challenge is, if you know there's good information available, how do you get it to the format which you can actually use? And I don't mean to be critical, but there are still government agents that think, whatever we do, we're doing a great job. Not realizing that the user actually needs the best available information.
Yeah. Let me speak to it on a couple things. One is there's the what we're calling AIS Class E, which is purely the vessel tracking stuff. And then within SmartChart AIS, that's where the charting and all that comes in. And I hear you exactly. For us, an awful lot of the users that we're targeting are the guys running around in an 18-foot pay liner. They're going to be overwhelmed with the information they get just out of SmartChart AIS. And they're going to have more information than they have when they...
The other myth is that the NOAA ENC, or any ENC produced by any hydrographic office, is somehow better than the paper nautical chart. Guess what it was digitized from?
Oh yeah, it's all the same.
And the idea that it's a 100% faithful reproduction is not the case. In some cases we did, Joe's right over this, studies for U.S. Navy, U.S. Coast Guard, found out that it's only a 75% agreement.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that we included active cat.
So, no surprise then that some outfits, again, going back to pilots being the early innovators, they're using Army Corps inland ENCs on the major western rivers because that is the best available information. But also, it has a center line where the channel is, so they can calculate where AIS vessels will go, not based on range and bearing, but having to follow the river. No, it has, again, I'm trying to be polite, it has to come around to the realization that there are users out there that need more than what it is that they're really relying on.
Thinking that to large perhaps in our conversations, we talk about standardization, not just on the AIS side, but also the ECF side.
Yep.
The SmartChart side of it. And look at some of those things of what will be the minimum to get the best of the recreational order. Any
very precise of over-reliance and what is with the systems. I think first of all, a lot of people think of backup systems they switch on when the one system fails. What you have shown is that often you do not recognize that the system has failed. So you need to have the systems controlling each other to automatically switch on or give an hint to the meaningful hint to the mariners that actually the system are working correctly. So that's the one piece. The other piece is even if the systems are working correctly, you only can rely to the level of the systems as the underlying data is correct. And that's going back to hydrographic charts. They're doing the best to do that, but it's not an easy job, and you have difficulty to identify the precision and the quality of the underlying charts. So it doesn't do you any good when you have a differential GPS with a sub-meter accuracy. The charts have a shift of 50 meters or so. I think that is something which also needs to be taken into consideration of all the reliance on the systems, that you need to rely on the systems with all the components which are in. And that's sometimes what we
Well, just a quick question for Ralph here. You would know where you're going. You would mention the Royal Majesty incident. I have to tell you that the SOL, you know what that really stood for?
You tell me.
Satellites out of limit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Even the U.S. Navy, you know what it stands for?
Did not show that.
Did the U.S. Navy know what it stands for? Bull puppy out of limit. Okay. The point that you made, though, is that, well, maybe there needs to be a redundant GPS system, right? So that the two GPSs can compare themselves to one another.
It is a suggestion.
Okay, I'm just trying to beat this again as light as I can. It's a really good suggestion. It will not work. I'll tell you why. If you consider the basic premise of a single point of failure, it's one thing for the equipment to fail, it's another thing for the service to have problems. So when you have receiver, autonomous, and integrity monitoring, which is a part of the differential GPS, this base station, this reference station is basically saying, I know exactly where I am, and whatever I'm sending out as a differential correction, you can trust this. If you cannot, I will send out a message against it. If you have the same chip, using the same service, even with different receivers, it's like, I think the analogy before, it's like two guys standing on the corner, both claiming to be Jesus. At least one of them has to be wrong, potentially both.
Well, if I follow you, I understand that Russia, China, some of them putting up global systems and others regional systems like India. Just through my own research, I didn't experience it in a navigational setting. But it just occurs to me, these are like having Deca, Omega, you know.
Yes, they are, and no, they are.
No, they're not.
They
Okay.
all use the same spectrum of frequency.
I see.
So you do have a single point of failure and vulnerability that goes across all of GNSS.
You get sunspot activity, it's a blowout.
That said,
The electromagnetic pulse or something.
that said, the move that I know and that RPCM is with the draft proposal book, we want receivers to be able to use more than one constellation, preferably all of them, and we want to go beyond that. And yes, look at the solutions from the different constellations, but then also, all right, now given what you've got, pick the best geometry and go further. But those systems are all vulnerable to things like light square, where you have, for mobile telephone use, a very strong ground-based signal that can basically power out whatever you're receiving just because of their proximity. So it does affect you in the open ocean, but it certainly affects you along the U.S. coastline, for example, and in the inland rivers, which is why the IMO wants the redundancy for the inland side, which you won't have in the U.S. There are moves to kit some of that, basically supporting redundancy, not necessarily resilience.
And in fact, I also wanted to make a point about the redundancy that one shouldn't just use one instrument in detriment to all the other instruments, which could give you the same longitude. Just use it and compare. I think the over-reliance point I'm trying to make is that and this is what I hear from the captains on board ship, that many people are too focused on GPS and not using the other instruments.
Absolutely.
One last question.
On over reliance, so when I look back and say, this model, one of the difficulties I saw is that I was trained in how to use the access, and I was not trained in what the limitations were, the main functions, what the limitations of the systems. So how do you see the limitations of electronic navigation overall being taken into consideration?
Well, if I understand your question quite the way I think my theme was being developed, is that the training aspect should include the virtual, not just the bridge simulator in that sense, but how should I say, the failures that can occur in the simulator. I know they're trying to do that. For instance, I hear that if a ship rolls too severely, the GPS signal can cut out for that reason alone. Why not replicate that kind of situation in a bridge simulator? And therefore also, if you do get fault readings, that first of all, that the manufacturers actually make it a piercing sound that lasts as long as until you press the button. Things like that. Because they're not the ones out there at sea. They're the ones programming, and then go, have at it, boys. It makes it too easy for them. It should be really, when we're also talking about test beds, yes, that's a new concept, by the way. They just threw these things at us in the older days and asked us to be the test bed, which is not a good idea.
Okay, we're a little over on time, so I'd like to thank the presenters.